So he did not contact me. I didn't realize the attorney was going to be here. Dr. Greenberg's absolutely right. The ratepayers are paying for that. So I would ask the MUA to come up and do a continuing discussion. Hopefully it'll be brief because we spent over an hour talking about their fine operations, and I'd like to conclude this if we could. I would ask that the discussion please be professional and factual, both sides of the table. The last time we had a discussion, again, the MUA came here to talk about their operations. It was a state requirement so we can get funding. I think they did a good job giving us an overview, and hopefully this discussion will clear up some, excuse me, Mrs. Walker, can you please not talk when I'm talking? Would that be possible at all? I hope this discussion is productive and it fills in some of the gaps. So, gentlemen, if you could identify yourselves, please, and we'll move forward.
I'm Art Haney, Chairman of the Board of Commissioners at the MUA.
Great.
Just as a point of clarification.
Push the button.
Push the button at
Button?
the bottom.
There you go.
I'm Art Haney,
Art, just move a little bit closer if you could, I'm
Please.
sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, we always have problems with the audio. Thank you.
Okay, can we hear me now?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I'm Art Haney, Chairman of the Board of Commissioners at the MUA. As a point of clarification, I did what was appropriate. I called the clerk's office and asked to go on the agenda for the authority. The clerk had told me she spoke with you. I explained the purpose of coming forward.
And it was a
explained
discussion.
that it would probably be 15, 20 minutes unless there was further discussion you wanted from the board. I wasn't aware that we call you directly now instead of calling the clerk.
Well, had there been a sense of urgency and I knew the attorney was going to be here, we could have had that conversation. Maybe things would have been cleared up versus discussing on the agenda. But why don't we just move forward?
All right, and with us?
Yeah, Mitchell Jacobs, Clary Giacobbe Alfieri, and Jacobs, General Counsel to the MUA.
Great.
The reason we came here, of course, you saw at the last meeting, we gave you a full presentation on the Municipal Utilities Authority, clear and concise about the operation, what the authority does, and certainly we were happy to come here and do that, and for it to go out and the public be able to see that as well. However, at the question period towards the end, we were asked about discounts for people 65 and over. And at that point, we indicated that we do give discounts, and quite honestly, we've been giving you discounts for over 20 years now. As a matter of fact, when I was the director, we increased them from 10% to 20%. And there are limited restrictions on there, financial restrictions, but at that time, Councilwoman Panos kept insisting that 65 and over, anybody can get it, and Senator Thompson came up saying the same thing. So I asked our attorney to please verify, in case we have an error here, that we could give discounts to people who don't have financial difficulties. And I will let the attorney speak, but the bottom line here is we still have the same financial restrictions that's established in state statute. So we cannot arbitrarily give everybody 65 years or older discounts from the Municipal Utilities Authority. We certainly do care about the citizens and our ratepayers. We show that just by the fact that we've been doing it for over 20 years. And I might add that we are one of the very few authorities that do provide discounts to the ratepayers. And I wanted that to be cleared up so the public understood as well that there are available discounts from the Utility Authority, and currently we do them at 20%, but they are limited and restricted by state statute and the state legislature. And quite honestly, I'd like to see the state legislature extended, because I think the limitation of $10,000 over the Social Security that was put in 1992, that was 25 years ago, I think that's become more restrictive, and more people find it difficult to live on $10,000 above Social Security. So I think it should be expanded to a greater degree, $15,000, $20,000, but I leave that up to the legislature to do. We also would give it to people who have the PAD, the Pharmaceutical Assistance Program that the state provides. But again, there's a financial restrictions and qualifications, and they have restrictions on individuals different than the $10,000 restriction. There's $26,000 and I believe it's $32,000 for married couples. But again, they would have to be qualified for the PAD and receive the PAD for us to go ahead and give them that. And I wanted that to make clear that everybody understood that, And I'll turn this over to Mr. Jacobs so he can tell you his findings, and we'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you,
Evening.
Mr. Council President, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to come speak tonight and for moving us up on the agenda. I can't really add that much more than Mr. Haney has already described to you tonight. I do know that there was some misunderstanding, and some people held the belief that anybody over 65 could get a discount from their water and sewer charges. That's just not the case. Just being 65 does not entitle someone under the statute, and that statute is 40:14B-22.2. Just because you're 65 does not entitle you to the discount. There are qualifications that you have to meet, so qualified people over 65 years old are entitled to the discounts, and that's the program that the authority has been running for at least the last 20 years. And as Mr. Haney just mentioned, there's really two classifications of people that once they attain the age of 65, the requirements that they have to meet. One is either that they meet an income threshold of $10,000, and there's a computation to determine what that $10,000 actually is. And then the second one is if they're eligible under the Pharmaceutical Assistance to the Aged and Disability Act, which again, if you're eligible under that act, you're also eligible for the discount from the authority for water and sewer charges. So if anybody were to come to the authority and they met the income qualifications or they were eligible for PAD, they'd be entitled to the discounts. I did have the opportunity to review the proposed resolution for tonight, and I understand that the council is urging the authority to try to increase those people who are over 65 and over who are eligible for the discount, but the way that the resolution is worded would usurp the statute, and it's not something that the authority is able to do. Again, my suggestion, as Mr. Haney's, was that if the law needs to be changed, it needs to be changed. Maybe that $10,000 is too low. It very, very well could be, but that has to be done by the legislature. We cannot impose our own rules and regulations determining who's eligible. We have to stick to the letter of the law. That's what the authority has been doing, and that's what they're going to continue to do.
Okay, great. You guys finished? I'm sure the council might have a question or two.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody from the council want to be heard on this item?
Can I ask a question?
Mr. Rosencrantz.
On the resolution that's on the agenda, let's see, I guess it would be item number 2 at the very top. And just a point of clarification, so it says, establish rates or schedules that provide for a reduction of rates which are charged to or collected from any person residing in the district of age 65 or more years and whose total income is less than $32,680. So you're referring to an income and you're referring to an age. Is the authority restricted to that, those numbers?
There's two types of people who are over 65 years old who are entitled. One is if there's a $10,000 income threshold. And again, that $10,000 is determined in a certain way. There are certain things that aren't included in it, such as Social Security payments, some specific state-type pensions, but it's a calculation. The other qualification is the PAD program. That PAD program for a married couple has that $32,000 threshold in it. So you can't interchange the two. You can't say all of a sudden that you want a $32,000 threshold just because the PAD program says it. It's either eligibility under PAD, which is determined by the state. It's a state program. So if somebody were to come into the authority with a PAD identification card, which shows that they're eligible, then the authority would give them that discount. If somebody came in to the authority and was able to prove that they met the $10,000 income threshold, they would also be entitled to it. But you can't interchange the two income threshold amount.
What type of discount would they be looking for or at?
Well, right
or
now
available?
it's 20%.
20% of their water, sewer, both?
Right.
Correct.
Both?
Yes.
Okay.
We agree. We feel that the $10,000 limitation in particular is low in this day and age. It's been 25 years, and would encourage the state legislature, the Assembly and the Senate to take action to change that. And if they do, there might be more people that would be able to be added to it.
So let me ask one further question. The 20% is set by the MUA or by the
By the MUA. The MUA can determine the percentages. And that, of course, is based upon the ability of the MUA to cover the cost. Because if it's too great a cost, then you start getting into millions of dollars.
Sure.
Then that burden gets put on to the other ratepayers.
So it's within the MUA's authority to increase that percentage instead of playing with the other numbers, the age and the pad restriction for the amount. But you can accommodate a further discount by increasing the percentage that is available.
Legally speaking, yes, the statute authorizes the authority to set that discount, and it's totally subjective up to them. However, a total financial analysis would have to be undertaken, because as you know, that every dollar that you take away in discount, somebody else is
Somebody
paying.
has to make it up. The expenses are the
So it would
expenses.
require a financial analysis to determine whether in fact it's doable or not.
Okay.
Comments on this? Dr. Greenberg, should you be speaking on this, actually? I'm not sure.
I'll let the attorney answer.
Well-
Yeah, you really shouldn't. You're a commissioner, you shouldn't be discussing this, and obviously if there's a vote, you shouldn't participate. Be no different than when President Kale steps down on things to do with cable, telephone, internet.
Anybody else want to be heard?
You're indicating I'm sorry, it's just a question.
Yes, sir.
For the attorney. So you're saying that any council member that sits on the authority should not be discussing the authority with the council?
No, I'm saying should not be participating in the conversation that may come up for a vote or not. This is about a resolution, and it shouldn't, it's one thing at the last meeting when you had your overview of the MUA and everything, that's fine. But when there's a resolution on the agenda that's going to come up for a vote, there's clearly a conflict of interest for Dr. Belli to be participating in the conversation either way.
So even though they're not employed by the MUA?
Correct, she's, absolutely. Absolutely, whether she's an employee or not, she's a commissioner.
Not to get too far into it, but the
No.
only reason I ask is when I was here when we merged them, I was a council member.
Right.
And I was also a mayor, and one of the things we wanted to do, although it was not written that council members would be appointed to the MUA, but we encouraged at least one council member to be appointed so that there was someone who could represent the council and provide information to the council and keep them updated and be involved in the MUA because the council created the utility authority.
Right, they created it, but now it's an independent authority.
And the purpose of having a council member on the authority,
That's a decision you folks can change as commissioners. But the fact is that Dr. Belli is an active commissioner. She votes on things that go on at the MUA, decisions, and she's also a council person and would participate in a vote on a discussion of a resolution tonight. And whether that resolution gets tabled or taken off the agenda, it's clearly a conflict of interest for her to be participating either way, whether she agrees or disagrees with the resolution or the issue at hand, which is the senior discounts.
Talk about the resolution that's on there tonight. But I do just want to ask the attorney and so that's why I want just
Okay.
clear. That's why I want clear. So basically, when we have people that we give discounts to, we just do it just to make sure that my memory serves me right for clarification. We don't have people come in and fill out applications. We basically do what the town does. We piggyback off them. So if the town's giving people discounts, we automatically give them a discount.
that was the policy that was established early on, rather than put people through the entire application process all over again, because they have to show proof of income, and there's a lot of things that they have to show proof of to get this done. We recognized that if the township approved them, that they had therefore met the obligations of proof, and we automatically gave them the discount. Now, we can start the application process, that's not a problem. It was just to save them the trouble of coming in with proof of their income tax and all these other documents to prove that they don't earn in excess of the regulation. We figured there was no point in forcing them to duplicate that.
I just want to make that clarification that you've, as you said, you've been doing this for 20 years, and basically if the town gives the discount to the taxpayer, it's been automatic then to the, through the MUA, and then at some point in time, it went from 10% to 20%, and basically, because I looked at the, off the website, the New Jersey rebate programs, and in the town, on the municipal side, the seniors' annual property tax deduction is they get $250 from their property taxes if they're 65 or older or disabled, who meet, or they have to meet a requirement less than $10,000 income, excluding the Social Security benefits and residency. So you're actually doing the same thing, because it's obviously the state law, and the only way it could be changed is if Assembly and state and the state changes it. Okay, thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to say that I never remembered us doing applications that you just did the same as what the town did.
Anybody else want to be heard on the MUA discussion?
Can I ask one more question?
Go around first before anybody, I want to hit people that haven't gone first. Mrs. Soar?
Yeah, I just wanted to make it clear in my mind. In other words, the rates, the amount of money, the income that drives this, you can't change how you would give discounts to seniors based on that income. In other words, you couldn't say, well, we can make the income 40,000 or 50,000. So that being said, this would only apply still to the people who meet the state guidelines. So what we're talking about then is, as far as discount is concerned, what the effect would be of increasing the discount percentage, correct? Okay.
Right.
All
Yeah,
right.
we cannot come up with a classification of ratepayer that we will change the rate for. They're all residential, they all pay the same. It's the state who is able to make the classification for seniors based on certain circumstances. We can't arbitrarily go out and say, well,
That's what I mean.
seniors at 60 will get it, or
Make $50,000 and.
6 children will get it. It's arbitrary, we can't do that. Everyone, it's water, it's a critical service that we provide, and everybody is treated equally when it comes to that. So the state was the only one, the legislature, that could change that. They did it by this legislation in 1992. I think they made a few changes along the way, but I think you're right, and we see it ourselves, that it would be much better if the state re-looked at the financial obligations, considering the bill is 25 years old, and things are costing a lot more, and it's much more difficult for people.
Right.
Yeah, you run into the same thing with the taxes. You only give a $250 discount for seniors who meet the qualifications. They don't even allow you the opportunity to give a percentage. If it was percentage, you could give a 10 or 20%.
But they have
reduction,
increased
which
it.
would be more significant. It's been $25 for 25 years. So again, that's something else that should really be looked at as well. But it's restricted. You have to get it done at the state legislature. So you have to get the Assembly and the Senate to pass the bills and the governor to sign it for you to do that. And for us to do this, it's the same thing. It's, even though the pad number for a married couple is the number you put down, the statute doesn't give a number. It says they qualify for pad. They qualify for pad, we give it to them. If they don't qualify for pad, but they do have that $10,000 restriction on their income over Social Security, then they would qualify and get it there.
So if I could just add to that, because it relates to your question. The resolution as it's currently written, in my opinion, it's asking the authority to do something they can't do. So,
I think people were thinking probably to widen the base that, receive discounts to try to give, and what they felt was maybe some more relief to certain, to people. But from what you're telling me, they can broaden the base because the income limits are set by the state.
correct, well, by statute.
By statute, rather, yeah. So, okay, I just want to make sure I was clear on that as well. Thank you.
And that's honestly why we reached a point where we felt we could do something more than we were doing, so we raised it to 20%, but we do have to pay attention to the overall cost. You don't want to shift more burden onto the other ratepayers, so when the opportunity is available, we do some things to try to make an adjustment we can.
Anybody else want to be heard? Mrs. Panos?
I disagree with your assessment. I understand you are hired by the MUA and you work for the MUA and you're going to lean that way. So I'm going to continue with that resolution. By the way, do you give discounts to active servicemen as the statute allows?
If they, under the statute, we would give them
They
whatever.
are entitled. My question is, do you give it?
Nobody's asked.
So,
It calls for a time of war.
no, active service.
Active service and they have to be deployed and during the time of war. So, as Mr. Haney is saying, nobody's ever applied for it. If they do apply for it, I'm not exactly sure how you figure out whether we're at war or not, you know.
There
I
was
just-
the Gulf War. Did you give it during the Gulf War?
Well, I do, but I don't know that if we're actively involved in one now. But the point of the matter is, if anybody comes to the authority asking for a discount because they're currently deployed in a time of war, as the statute says, the authority would give it to them.
Okay, that's right. Maybe they'll send their wife because they're deployed, but or their husband. I'm still going to go with that because I disagree with it. This statute says any municipality, you know, we can read this, county authority may establish within its district rates or schedules a reduction for total blah, 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 at the age of 65 or more years, or, and the or part is what you're basing your result on, that you have to be on pad and all that. Listen, I'm not, you know what, the discussion.
But can I just
understand what you're
respond?
saying, and I want you to understand
I'm
what
reading
Hold on,
it.
just let her finish the statement
Okay,
before you.
sorry, go ahead.
I understand what you're saying, sir, and I just want you to understand what I'm saying. I disagree with your assessment of this ordinance. I'm going to, we'll bring it before the legislature, but I'm going to keep that resolution tonight. I'm going to ask that this gets included with the active service. And is this a continuation of there's one thing I forgot to ask last week. This is off, I understand where you're coming from. You don't have to, stay in, you don't have to pay the money. I know where you're coming from.
But can I make a suggestion to you?
Sure.
I know that some people could misinterpret the way that the statute was written due to punctuation. Look at the punctuation, look at the word and wait, and go back and look at the legislative history, which the bill was introduced back in 1992. I would suggest that you go back and read the legislative history where it talks about that $10,000 income qualification in it. So that's just a suggestion.
Okay. There's one other thing I forgot to ask. Someone told me of a trust fund. Is there a trust fund in the MUA that at one point there was money put into it? Like, are you aware of any trust fund in the MUA that Betty English, I would like somebody in the audience told me about it, and I wasn't aware of it. What's it called?
Environmental Infrastructure Trust Fund, is that what you're talking about? That's just a state program. I don't know if that's what you're talking
No,
about.
I think it has to do with,
Yeah, you need to talk into the mic, Art. Thank you.
oh, I'm sorry. I think that has to do with retiree health benefits. It's an obligation that the authority, I think all the authorities have the same obligation. I think the town may be having to look at that as well for the future. But that's what that is. It protects the interest of the authority, the financial interest of the authority, to ensure that the funding is not a burden that's put on everybody at a later date. The money is there to pay for the retirees.
Well, I just heard about it today.
There's no separate fund out there. Everything is on the books and up front. The auditor was,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, our auditor was your auditor. He was here last week to tell you we were fine.
I'm just asking you, someone told me there's a trust fund, there's like $5 million in it, and it goes towards, I'm sorry, I'm just asking you because I just heard it today, that there's a trust fund. I wish the lady could actually get up and speak, but is this a discussion with somebody from the audience?
No, this is a council
okay.
discussion.
Is there a trust fund that has $5 million that the employees do not have to contribute to, but it just comes out of off the top of the
You're
budget?
thinking of it's the retiree health fund.
That's what it's called?
That's where the money goes in.
I'm going to continue with this resolution, and you're a lawyer, and I'll ask for clarification down at the state, but I'm going to ask the council to support this just for, to put it through tonight.
We don't have a problem with what you want to do. As a matter of fact, if you could tell me that the town is allowed to create an ordinance that determines the amount of money that we can then put a
I'm not
discount
going to tell you
on,
anything. I
that's
just
fine,
read this
but my
ordinance
understanding
differently.
is that the township cannot supersede a state statute. So I would encourage you and everyone else to talk to the legislature and
Okay,
get it changed.
but this ordinance, I spoke to attorneys, and they interpreted that you could supersede this. You're
Okay,
not
so
involved with
we're
it.
gonna
So
go back
we
and
could go
forth
back
on
and
this,
forth,
so,
and he's
yeah.
going to go
It's
cha-ching,
okay, that's
cha-ching.
why we asked our attorney.
Right.
I know, that's why, but I'm going to go.
We'll line up a
forward with
bunch of
that resolution.
attorneys and we'll let them fight it out, cage match.
One of them's going to decide.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes, from listening to all the conversation, I think that we should encourage people to contact their legislator and have it changed at a state level. It seems like the MUA is given the 20% discount. We need to change the income because that is very low for now, and I think that's what we really need to do at this time. Really call your legislator and your senators, have it changed.
Mrs. Panos?
I'm
Mrs.
sorry.
Panos, thank you. Mrs. Walker, you finished? Yes. Anybody else want to be heard or hasn't spoken? Mr. Rosencrantz, quickly?
I just have one question. Do we know how many people we're talking about that receive a discount today? I know that's a number that you probably have. All
Currently, it's about 478.
right, thank you.
It's
I forgot to just ask one thing.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I know you're giving the 20%, and people are talking about you could possibly raise that up. I want everybody to keep in mind, though, someone has to pay for that, and there are a lot of families out there with young children, and that burden would be shifted to them. So we have to think about that.
Yep. So,
I get a second bite, everybody else.
okay, go ahead, Mrs. Panos. Go ahead, go ahead.
So listen,
You need the mic.
okay, and I understand that somebody has to pay for it. There's 470 people. Hopefully, we could double and triple that number. But these seniors have been subsidizing, technically, they've been paying for sewer that they don't use. They have a minimum this and minimum that. So I don't see a problem if this, when the lawyers decide on if this is, you're going to say no, and I'm going to find out if it's yes or no. Then I'm going to come back and say, listen, instead of giving them 20%, if you are under $10,000, you're borderline poverty level. And if that's going to be it, I'm going to come back and look for a resolution for 50%. They've been subsidizing the rest of the town by paying that extra sewer and water anyway. So we'll go with that forward tonight. If that doesn't work out, we have to give relief to more people than 20% if you're $10,000 for sewer. You're getting 20% off sewer that you're not using anyway, that you're being charged for. So we'll see this again. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll just close up the council comments. So, obviously, I think there's an understanding from the public and from the council and hopefully from the MUA that seniors have spoken time and time again about their water and sewer bills, particularly on the sewer side, about their concerns, just like taxes, just like water and sewer, because they're on limited incomes, right? We had a discussion tonight about the statute and about the resolution that's on the agenda, and I understand what the lawyer says respectfully, and I think the only lever the MUA has, I think Mr. Haney mentioned this, was the percentage, and I know it's 20% now. Would the MUA be willing to at least do, and again, I'm saying this in the context of that we don't want to ruin your operating budget, right? So obviously, understanding that if you take money away if you give money from one group, it comes from another group, I get that, right? The pie's only so big. But would you guys be willing to at least look at, do like a return on investment to say, gee, if we upped it by, 2%, what would that do to our bottom line kind of thing? I mean, is that reasonable just to ask the question, to do some sort of a study, non-binding, you're not being held to anything, just so the public can say, look, the MUA is looking at this and we're trying to understand what it's going to do to operations. Is that reasonable, or is that something you guys could look at, or?
We have no problem looking at it. We have no problem looking at it. We have, in the past, looked at, the point of the whole thing is that we've been doing this for 20 years.
Understood.
When the law came out and said we could do this.
No, I get that. We went through that, but I'm talking about the percentage.
As time went on, we doubled it. We went from 10% to 20%. And so we do look at this type of thing and watch this thing and see what's happening with it. So we don't have a problem looking at it, and that's what we've done in the past. We've looked at it, and if we found a way of doing this without having a negative impact on other ratepayers, we've taken the opportunity to do that. You know, it's something we do. We care. We're not interested in making things difficult for people. We want to try to make it as
So is that a reasonable request?
reasonable as us.
So
So
you
we have no
could-
problem looking at it and seeing if we can make a determination to make a change.
Okay.
So
That would be my request, that at least we say that we did our due diligence, and we look, and is there any way we can, you know, change the percentage to a certain point where it's not going to hit your operations, it's not going to be a burden to everybody else is paying, you know, paying for the water and sewer? I mean, whatever the math is, if the math doesn't make sense, I get that. I think the residents will get that. But I think people are looking for what's the next step, right? What can we do to at least try? And again, this is not a shot, this is a discussion, right? You guys laid out your operation, I thought, very thoroughly at the last meeting. Really, we got a good appreciation of what you guys do, et cetera, and the efficiencies. But there is and you know this, Art, you've been coming to meetings for a long time, and we've heard this time and time again. Seniors are hurting, and if there's something we can do for the seniors without affecting the operation, I think we owe it to our community. So all I'm asking as a council person is, could the MUA go back and look at this and do some sort of an analysis and say, you know, hey, we looked at it, you know, it doesn't make any sense for these reasons, or we could do this percentage and we can help these seniors. That's all I'm asking. Is that reasonable?
we do and we will,
Okay.
and we don't have a problem. It's the same issues that you run into. You don't want to
Absolutely.
raise
The pie's only
taxes
so
every
big,
year
right?
if you don't
Get
have
it.
to, but you try not to, and unfortunately,
Absolutely.
you get in a position where you have to.
Yep.
But we all try to make it as reasonable as we can and provide the services that are needed within town. And here, water and wastewater are probably the most critical services available to the public.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. President.